I want you to try a little thought experiment with me for a second. Just mentally transport yourself to a very specific scene. You're standing outside, and you are facing this tall, heavy chain link fence. The air is completely still.
Mm.
You can actually feel the cold, rigid metal wire right under your fingertips.
Mm.
And, well, sitting quietly on the exact opposite side of that physical barrier is a chimpanzee.
Okay, a powerful visual.
Right. So you stop moving, the chimp stops moving. And for just this tiny fraction of a second, your gaze locks with theirs.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And in that microscopic window of time, like before your prefrontal cortex even has a chance to formulate a conscious thought or put a word to it, a sensation just hits you. It's this massive, undeniable wave of recognition. You don't need a translator to parse what is happening, you know? You look into those eyes, and it's like a silent, ancient frequency connects the two of you, totally bypassing language.
Yeah, and that sensation you're describing, it isn't just, a poetic metaphor. It's an actual measurable neurological event.
Wait, really? Like physically measurable?
Oh, absolutely. When human and non-human primates lock eyes like that, it actually bypasses the higher order logical processing centers of the brain. It
Wow.
fires directly into the amygdala and the ancient limbic system.
That is wild.
Right. What you're experiencing in that exact moment isn't just sentimentality or projecting human emotion. It's an evolutionary echo. You are literally running a recognition software that has been hard-coded into our shared biology for, millions of years.
Millions of years, which is just, that is the exact frequency we are tuning into today. Because you, the listener, have handed us a truly massive stack of visual data to process for this deep dive.
It is quite the collection.
It really is. We are looking at this highly curated collection of vivid wildlife photographs, incredibly dense image descriptions, and these raw field observations capturing primates from all across the globe.
And our mission today is to completely deconstruct these images.
Exactly. We are not just going to marvel at them and say how cute they are. We are going to dissect the biological and evolutionary mechanics of primate bonding. We really want to figure out how something as simple as a touch or a glance scales up into this complex social architecture and eventually, into cross-species empathy.
But to do that effectively, we kind of have to change how we view these sources right off the bat.
What do you mean?
Well, it's very easy to look at a photograph of a baby monkey and just dismiss it as a charming piece of nature photography, right?
Yeah.
We just want to say, ah.
Oh, totally. It's a reflex.
Exactly. But we have to strip away that instinct.
Yeah.
Because these images, they are raw data points. They are frozen moments capturing a biological imperative in action.
Right.
They document in real time how tactile input, maternal investment, and community structure operate. And they don't operate as optional comforts. They are brutal, non-negotiable survival tools.
Non-negotiable. I like that phrasing. So think of this as your masterclass in Primate Social Life 101. We're going to analyze this evidence together side by side. And I guarantee that by unpacking the visual data sitting in front of us, you're going to walk away with some pretty profound realizations about human nature.
Because at the end of the day, peering into the dynamics of a macaque troop or a gorilla family is really just looking into a very old, slightly furrier mirror.
A furrier mirror, yes.
That's
Yeah.
true. If we want to understand the architecture of human society, we have to excavate the foundational layer of primate society first.
Okay, let's start digging then.
Well, looking at the first batch of visual sources you provided, that foundation is just screamingly obvious. The entire social structure is built upon the mechanics of intense, all-consuming care for the young.
Let's actually pull up the first piece of visual evidence so we can see how that looks in practice. Because I'm looking at this photograph taken in Sri Lanka featuring a toque macaque baby. And the visual composition here is just striking.
It really is beautifully documented.
Yeah, the baby seems to be almost physically melting into the mother's body. It's asleep, its face is completely relaxed, and it's nestled deep against her chest, just totally encircled by her arms. The whole image radiates this overwhelming sense of physical security.
And then contrast that delicate image with the photograph from the Democratic Republic of Congo.
Oh, the gorilla one.
Yes, in that image we have a mountain gorilla. Now, this is an animal that possesses earth-shattering physical power, right?
Right, it's just this massive, imposing wall of silver and black muscle.
Exactly. Yet the physical action being captured is incredibly delicate. The gorilla is tenderly cradling twin newborns.
Twins.
Yeah, twins.
Yeah.
And the sheer physical disparity between that world-bending strength of the adult and the fragile, tiny bodies of the babies, it perfectly illustrates the biological strategy at play here.
And what's interesting looking through the rest of the stack is that it doesn't seem to just happen during rest or sleep either. Like, these sources show this physical connection woven into completely mundane daily activities.
It's a constant state.
Right, because we have documentation here of a Bornean orangutan mother sharing a piece of fruit with her baby, and their faces are mere inches apart. And then there's another shot of a Tibetan macaque and its cub just sitting together in a field of vibrant purple and yellow flowers.
Just absorbing sensory data side by side.
Yeah, exactly. They're just existing in the environment together. But here's my question. I mean, I understand that babies need their mothers, obviously, but why is the physical proximity so extreme?
What do you mean?
Well, like, a deer fawn can walk and hide in the brush hours after it's born. These primate babies look completely useless without that constant physical tether.
Well, actually, useless is a highly biologically accurate term in this context.
Really useless.
Yes. Primates employ a very specific evolutionary reproductive strategy. Many mammals, like the deer you just mentioned, are born precocial.
Precocial, meaning they hit the ground running.
Exactly. But primate infants are born highly altricial.
Altricial, okay.
That means they enter the world profoundly underdeveloped and entirely helpless. I mean, they cannot forage, they cannot regulate their own body temperature effectively, and they certainly cannot defend themselves.
Well, wait, why would evolution select for a baby that is basically a biological liability? That seems completely counterintuitive to survival. Why not just bake them a little longer so they can walk?
Well, it comes down to a fundamental trade-off. It's a compromise between brain size and the physical limits of the birth canal.
Oh, okay.
Especially as early primates evolved complex locomotion and eventually bipedalism. To grow the massive, highly complex brain required to navigate primate social life, the infant must be born early.
So it's like...
It's essentially finishing its gestation on the outside.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, so this prolonged childhood isn't a flaw in the system. It is the core feature. This massive window of vulnerability necessitates intense maternal care, and that extended dependency is the incubator for their social intelligence.
I see. So the mother isn't just, a food source providing milk. By physically carrying the infant everywhere, it's kind of like the ultimate biological baby wearing.
That's a perfect analogy.
Right. She is essentially acting as an external life support system while the baby's brain physically finishes building itself.
Yes, she is literally an external nervous system. Because the constant physical touch in that baby-wearing dynamic, it isn't passive. It's an active, ongoing biological process.
How so? Like, what's happening mechanically?
Well, think about the friction of the mother's fur, the rhythm of her heartbeat, the physical pressure of her arms holding the infant tight. All of this tactile input travels up the infant's spinal cord and directly into the developing somatosensory cortex.
Okay, so the touch is actually shaping the brain.
Exactly. It physically thickens the neural pathways that allow the infant to learn how to self-soothe, how to manage stress hormones, and crucially, how to eventually trust other members of the troop.
Which opens up a massive question for me. If this infant's entire nervous system is wired to require this constant deep pressure touch just to develop normally, what happens when they grow up?
They adapt.
Right. But the baby doesn't just hop off the mother's back at age 3 and suddenly decide it doesn't need physical contact anymore, right? How do adult primates satisfy a biological craving for touch that has been hard-coded into them since the literal day they were born?
That is the perfect question.
Yeah.
Because they turn to the behavior that forms the second major pillar of the source material you brought us today.
Okay.
Once that maternal care tapers off, the biological necessity for tactile input is transferred to the broader community. And it's transferred through social grooming.
Social grooming. I have to admit, I'm struggling with this concept just a little bit.
Why is that?
Because when I hear the word grooming, I think of a strictly utilitarian task, like standing in front of a bathroom mirror flossing or picking a tick off a dog. It's just hygiene.
Right, the human context.
Yeah. So you were telling me that picking dead skin and bugs out of hair is the social successor to maternal bonding. Surely things like food dominance or sheer physical strength play a bigger role in their society than, who gives the best back scratch.
I get why you'd think that. But the visual data we're looking at suggests otherwise.
Show me.
Look at this photograph of the Japanese macaques. The snow monkeys sitting by the water.
Okay, yeah, I'm looking at it.
Notice the specific posture of the monkey receiving the grooming. Its eyes are half closed, its muscles are completely slack. It is in a state of profound physiological relaxation.
Yeah, it looks like it's at a day spa.
Exactly. If this were purely about removing parasites, it would be a quick utilitarian transaction. Get the bug, move on. But these grooming sessions can last for hours.
Hours. Wow. Okay, there is another image in the stack that actually highlights how deeply ingrained this is, regardless of the setting. It's the shot from India of the two bonnet macaques.
The motorbike one.
Yes. They are sitting on a parked Honda motorbike. They are in the middle of this bustling, modern, urban environment, surrounded by human machinery, and yet they are just meticulously picking through each other's fur. They are even peering into the motorbike's rearview mirror while they do it. It's almost comical.
It is a funny image, but it tells us so much. The setting changes entirely, but the biological program remains totally intact.
So it's not just a forced behavior.
Not at all. And to answer your earlier skepticism,
Yeah.
yes, grooming removes dirt and ticks. Obviously. But viewing it merely as hygiene is like saying a smartphone is just a piece of glass.
Okay, I like that. What is the smartphone then?
Grooming is an evolutionary API. It is a direct biological interface where one primate can essentially hack into the nervous system of another.
Whoa. An evolutionary API. That is, okay, walk me through the mechanics of that hack. What is actually happening under the fur when they do this?
Okay, so when a primate's skin is stimulated by those rhythmic sweeping motions of grooming, it activates very specific sensory nerve fibers in the skin. They're called C-tactile efferents.
C-tactile efferents.
Right. And these fibers are unique. They don't register pain or temperature. They are specifically, exclusively tuned to slow, gentle touch.
So they are built for grooming.
Precisely. And when they are activated, they send the signal directly to the hypothalamus in the brain. The hypothalamus then responds by releasing a massive flood of oxytocin and endorphins straight into the bloodstream.
Wow. So it's essentially a pharmaceutical exchange.
It is exactly that. It physically lowers the heart rate, it dilates blood vessels, which reduces blood pressure, and most importantly, it actively suppresses the production of cortisol, which is the primary stress hormone.
Okay, so they are drugging each other with relaxation hormones.
In a way, yes. This biochemical cascade physically alters the brain's neuroplasticity. It writes lines of trust code between those two individuals. When two chimpanzees groom each other, they aren't just getting clean, they are building an alliance using neurochemistry.
Man, that totally reframes the entire power dynamic for me.
It changes everything, doesn't it?
It does. Because if grooming is this essential current, like if it's the main way you build alliances and physically regulate your own stress system, then being denied that touch must be absolutely devastating.
It is.
So does withholding grooming act as a weapon then? Like, if you anger the troop, do they literally cut off your oxytocin supply?
Yes, they do. Ostracization is one of the most lethal forces in primate society.
Lethal. Like, deadly.
Literally lethal. If a primate is isolated and denied access to the troop's grooming network, their biology begins to turn on them. Without that regular tactile input to suppress it, their cortisol levels remain chronically elevated.
Because they can't bring the stress down.
Right. And this places an immense allostatic load on their body.
Allostatic load meaning what?
Meaning the physiological wear and tear from chronic stress just skyrockets. Their immune system crashes, their wound healing slows down dramatically, and they become highly susceptible to disease. For a primate, a lack of social bonds isn't just feeling lonely, it is a fatal condition.
A fatal condition? That is intense.
Yeah.
And, you know, looking at the sources, that invisible biological tether keeping them alive becomes starkly visible when you look at these animals in hostile environments.
Oh, absolutely.
When the world outside turns lethal, that neurochemical alliance you just described is put to the ultimate test.
And the winter-based imagery in our stack provides the perfect laboratory to observe this in action.
Yeah, let's look at those. There's an image here that completely stopped me in my tracks when I first saw it. It's labeled The Golden Huddle.
Such a powerful photograph.
It really is. It is a photograph of 3 golden snub-nosed monkeys, and they are perched on this heavily snow-laden branch. And the visual contrast is almost jarring, you know?
The colors, right?
Yeah, they have these shockingly vibrant, fleshy blue faces, and they are surrounded by this incredibly thick, luxurious golden-orange coat. But what is really striking is the posture. They aren't just sitting near each other. They are clutched together so tightly their limbs are completely interwoven. It's almost difficult to tell where one monkey ends and the next begins. They look like a single, multi-headed organism just bracing against the freezing white background.
That image is a masterclass in thermodynamics and social integration. And we see a very similar biological strategy in the portrait of the Japanese macaque emerging from the hot spring.
Right, the iconic snow monkey in the water.
Exactly. The alt text describes the raw visual data perfectly for that one. We have a vibrant, red, fleshy face surrounded by wet, spiked, matted gray fur, staring into the camera with this intense gaze.
Honestly, its face looks almost painfully exposed to the freezing air in that shot. It looks like an animal that is battling the elements on a razor's edge.
Because it is on a razor's edge.
Ah,
The hot springs are a brilliant behavioral adaptation, of course. They utilize geothermal heat to survive sub-zero temperatures. But there is a catch.
what's the catch?
The hot water causes vasodilation. It opens up the blood vessels in the skin to release heat. So when they step out of that hot water into the freezing air, the heat loss is rapid and incredibly dangerous.
Oh, wow. I never thought about the moment they get out.
Right. The hot spring alone is not enough to guarantee survival, especially because access to the prime spots in the hot water is strictly dictated by social hierarchy.
Oh, I see where this is going. Let me guess. The ones who don't get the prime hot tub spots have to rely on the API.
You got it.
They have to rely on the physical touch network to survive the freeze.
Exactly. The huddle we see with the snub-nosed monkeys, which the macaques also utilize when they're out of the water, is a biological thermal shield. By pressing their bodies tightly together, they drastically reduce the surface area exposed to the freezing air, cooling their core temperatures.
That makes total sense structurally.
But here is the critical mechanism. You are not allowed into the center of that huddle unless you have spent the warmer months building up your social capital through grooming.
This completely upends a narrative I feel like I've been taught my entire life.
The survival of the fittest.
Yes! We throw around the phrase survival of the fittest constantly in our culture. And usually the interpretation of that is the lone wolf, the biggest, meanest, most aggressive individual who relies on nobody and just dominates the landscape by force.
It's a very pervasive myth.
But looking at these primates freezing in the snow, the fittest animal isn't the biggest one, it's the one with the most robust social network.
Exactly.
If you are a massive, aggressive monkey who alienated everyone in the troop and has no grooming partners, you are going to freeze to death alone on the edge of the branch. They won't let you in the middle.
The lone wolf narrative is an absolute biological fiction in the primate world. Fitness is inextricably linked to social integration. Your capacity to cooperate, to engage in reciprocal touch, and to maintain an alliance is a far, far greater evolutionary asset than sheer muscle mass.
That is just wow. So we've established that natural extremes, like a brutal winter, force primates together. They utilize these ancient touch mechanics to form a thermal shield. But as we comb deeper into the source material, a totally new variable appears. We start seeing threats that aren't natural. We see rapid environmental alterations that test these bonds in ways evolution never prepared them for.
Right. And to really understand the impact of those unnatural alterations, we first have to look at the baseline of how wild groups handle high-stress situations normally.
Okay, let's look at the baseline.
The source material includes a photograph of chimpanzees in Uganda.
I have that one right here.
The description notes, aggressive postures, mouths wide open in screams charging to the brush. It is a documentation of wild primate warfare.
It looks incredibly chaotic and terrifying.
It is. Wild chimpanzee troops have deeply complex territorial dynamics. They conduct organized border patrols, and they will engage in coordinated, lethal attacks against neighboring groups.
Coordinated attacks.
Yes. But analyze the mechanics of that warfare for a second. You cannot mount a coordinated defense or assault without immense internal cohesion.
Right, you need to trust the chimp next to you.
Exactly. In high-stress, violent environments, the internal grooming networks and alliances become hyperactivated. The external threat relies entirely on the internal bonds holding firm.
But what happens when the external threat doesn't come from another chimp troop?
Then the system breaks down.
Because there's an image in the stack that shifts the tone of this entire deep dive. It is a stark, totally factual documentation of rapid environmental alteration.
It's a tough image to process.
The photograph shows a wild orangutan, entirely isolated, navigating across a massive stripped fallen tree trunk, and looming directly in front of it is an enormous orange Hitachi bulldozer. Just an industrial machine and this single primate.
From a purely biological and geographical standpoint, an industrial presence of that scale represents an instant catastrophic fragmentation of the landscape.
Instant fragmentation.
Yes. When a forest is rapidly converted for industrial use, The canopy, which is the physical infrastructure that orangutans rely on for movement, for food, and for social interaction, is just eradicated.
We have to look at the immediate biological fallout of that sudden geographical shift. I mean,
Mhm.
if the trees are gone, the network we spent the last half hour talking about goes with them, right?
Precisely. The intricate, multi-generational social architecture is instantly vaporized. The maternal lines are broken, the grooming partnerships are scattered to the wind.
The whole system just crashes.
It does. The geographic fragmentation leaves surviving infants and juveniles physically isolated. And as we established earlier with the concept of allostatic load, when a young primate is suddenly deprived of a mother's deep pressure touch and the community's grooming network, their biological systems begin to literally collapse.
Which brings us to the visual data detailing the aftermath of that fragmentation. The sources provide images from primate sanctuaries. These are places attempting to mitigate that exact biological fallout you just described.
And their methods are fascinating.
We have an image from Borneo of a surrogate older orangutan gently holding a younger, orphaned orangutan in the trees. The older primate is clearly attempting to reestablish that maternal touch.
But even more revealing is the photograph of the human sanctuary worker.
Oh, this one is incredible.
The alt text identifies him as Amir.
Right, Amir.
He's wearing a green uniform. He has a medical mask over his face and sterile latex gloves on his hands. And he is holding a young orphaned orangutan tightly against his chest in a full, deep embrace. The orangutan's eyes are calm. It is securely anchored to the human.
I need to understand the mechanism here, though, because Amir does not have thick orange fur. He does not smell like a forest canopy. He's wearing sterile latex and a medical face mask. How is this orphan primate's ancient, hardwired nervous system accepting this human as a valid substitute for a biological mother?
Because the nervous system is absolutely desperate for the tactile input required to avoid neurodevelopmental stalling.
Neurodevelopmental stalling.
Yes. In human medicine, this stalling is often referred to as failure to thrive.
Oh, I've heard that term used for human babies.
It's the same principle. When an infant primate is deprived of touch, their brain literally stops producing the necessary growth hormones. Their glucocorticoid receptors, which are the things that help turn off the stress response, become downregulated. They can die purely from the biological shock of isolation.
Just from the lack of touch.
Just from the lack of touch. So Amir's embrace is artificial, yes, but the pressure of his arms, the heat radiating from his chest, the rhythmic expansion of his lungs as he breathes, those are universal mammalian signals.
Wow. So Amir and the other sanctuary workers are essentially acting as biological hackers?
I love that term, yes.
Like, the orangutan's developmental operating system is crashing because the forest network was destroyed. And Amir is using the back door of the somatosensory system, using deep pressure touch through a latex glove to literally write the lines of code necessary to keep that animal's brain developing.
That is a highly, highly accurate way to visualize it. They are patching a corrupted system by manually supplying the sensory input that evolution expects. They are telling the infant's brain, through tactile friction, that the environment is safe enough to resume growing.
It is stunning that a human being in medical PPE can provide life-saving neurological input to a completely different species. But, well, it seamlessly pivots us to the final and perhaps most profound section of our visual sources today, because it forces us to confront the reality of cross-species connection.
And if you follow the logic, it makes sense. If the tactile language of care and grooming is the fundamental operating system of primates, it stands to reason that this language is not strictly confined by species borders.
The evidence for this in the stack is honestly mind-bending. First, we have an image of a wild orangutan on a muddy riverbank.
The river image.
Yeah. A human man is submerged up to his chest in the murky water, and he appears to be clearing away debris or maybe snakes, according to the description. But the orangutan is leaning precariously over the edge, fully extending its long arm, offering its hand down to the man in the water.
Just like a human would.
Exactly. It looks identical to a human offering to pull a friend out of a sinkhole.
It is an unambiguous behavioral display of assistance.
And it extends beyond just primate to human interaction, too. There is an incredible photograph of a large, deeply muscled black bonobo sitting on the forest floor, and cradled in its massive arms is a small brown animal. It looks like a mongoose or some similar small mammal.
Right.
But the bonobo isn't eating it. It isn't inspecting it like a toy. It is holding the small creature with the exact same delicate, protective posture we saw the mountain gorilla use with its newborn twins earlier.
which is incredible. And when we synthesize these images with everything we've discussed today about the neurochemistry of bonding, we arrive at a really disruptive conclusion regarding empathy.
Disruptive.
Well, empathy is generally defined as the ability to perceive, understand, and respond to the emotional or physical distress of another. And historically, humans have guarded empathy jealously.
What do you mean by guarded it?
We categorize it as a high-level philosophical construct. We treat it as a byproduct of our massive prefrontal cortex. Essentially, we like to believe we invented caring.
Right, we treat it as a moral achievement rather than a biological function. But you're saying that if picking bugs out of fur releases oxytocin to ensure survival in the cold, then empathy is just the software that runs on that exact same hardware.
Yes. Empathy is an ancient, hardwired biological reflex. It predates human philosophy by tens of millions of years. It evolved because recognizing distress in a troop member and being compelled to soothe that distress through touch kept the thermal shield intact.
It kept the whole defensive network strong.
Exactly. The images of the orangutan reaching into the river and the bonobo cradling the mongoose demonstrate that this biological circuitry is so deeply entrenched it can occasionally misfire, or rather overfire, easily crossing the species barrier.
Which brings us to the final source in our stack. The image titled, "The Kiss Through the Wire."
This photograph is the absolute synthesis of every mechanism we have discussed today.
Let me break down the visual data from the alt text for everyone listening, because it's striking.
Yeah.
It is a close-up, black and white, highly contrasted photograph.
Very dramatic lighting.
Yeah. The frame is divided down the middle by a heavy, rigid chain-link fence. On the left side of the metal wire is a chimpanzee. The description specifically notes the deep, dark sclera of the chimp's eyes locked forward. Its lips are pressed firmly against the cold metal wire in a gentle, deliberate gesture. On the right side of the frame is the side profile of an elderly human woman with white hair. Her face is pressed so closely to the fence that her nose almost touches the wire, directly opposite the chimpanzee's lips. The physical barrier is absolute, but the biological communication is just piercing right through it.
Look at the mechanisms at play here, though. The chimpanzee is initiating an ancient greeting protocol. It is attempting to execute the tactile exchange that releases oxytocin, builds trust, and lowers allostatic load.
Even through the fence.
Even through the fence.
Yes.
And the human, utilizing the exact same evolutionary hardware, intuitively understands the protocol and mirrors it perfectly. The wire prevents the skin-to-skin friction, sure, but the shared evolutionary programming is essentially shaking hands across the divide.
Think about the implications of that for you, the listener. Consider your own daily life. When a friend is crying and you feel that sudden, overwhelming magnetic pull to wrap your arms around them, or, well, when you see a stray dog shaking in the rain and you feel an actual physical ache in your chest compelling you to pet it, you are not just executing a learned social courtesy.
Not at all.
You are activating a million-year-old survival reflex. You are deploying the exact same biological API that the macaques use to survive a blizzard.
That is the ultimate takeaway here. Empathy and the drive for physical connection are not human inventions. They are our oldest evolutionary inheritance.
Let's pull all of this data together, because what an incredible chronological journey through these sources. We started at the absolute beginning, examining the helpless Altricial infant and how the mother's intense, deep-pressure baby-wearing physically wires the primate nervous system.
We tracked how that biological need for touch matures into social grooming, acting as a neurochemical interface that literally dictates heart rates, immune function, and social hierarchy.
We analyzed how that network forms a literal biological shield, allowing individuals to survive lethal temperatures by pooling their core heat in a golden huddle, proving once and for all that the fittest is actually just the most connected.
We observed the catastrophic biological fallout when rapid environmental alteration fragments that geographical network, requiring human biological hackers to artificially supply the tactile input needed to prevent neurodevelopmental collapse in orphans.
And finally, we watched that ancient survival code jump the species barrier, culminating in a chimpanzee and an elderly woman exchanging a profound neurochemical greeting through a cold metal fence.
If there is a final piece of analysis to extract from this deep dive, it is a complete reevaluation of human independence. Modern society increasingly views our deep biological craving for community, our reliance on physical touch, and our emotional vulnerability as weaknesses to be overcome.
Right, like we need to be independent lone wolves.
Exactly. But the raw data from the primate world dictates the exact opposite. Our absolute dependency on connection is not a weakness. It is the single most powerful evolutionary tool our lineage ever produced.
Which leaves me with the final thought I really want you to mull over today. We have spent the last hour breaking down the hardcore biological mechanisms that prove physical touch and face-to-face proximity are non-negotiable requirements for primate brain development and survival. Without that tactile input, the system crashes. Now, look at the architecture of our modern human ecosystem. We are rapidly engineering physical touch right out of our daily lives. We replace face-to-face grooming with remote digital interactions. We build invisible digital chain link fences between ourselves and our communities. If our nervous systems are still running on that million-year-old primate software, are we unintentionally starving ourselves of the very biological friction that built our brains in the first place?
It is arguably the defining neurobiological question of the modern era.
So the next time you see a friend, consider skipping the text message. Break through the digital fence, give them a hug, engage the API, pull them into the huddle. Your inner primate will thank you. Thank you so much to you, the listener, for supplying such a phenomenal visual sources for this deep dive. The next time you find yourself looking through a physical barrier, locking eyes with another creature, remember, you aren't just observing wildlife. You are making contact with the family tree.